Warriors, in Jesus' name. Chapter 13. Well, Mickey said as she rose, it's been a pleasure meeting you and talking to you. I hope you don't mind if I come back again. Bella smiled. No, I don't mind. As long as, well, I mean, it's always better to visit when Gordon's at work. I understand. Mickey frowned as her cell phone vibrated for the third time in a row. She smiled at Bella. Excuse me, I turned it on vibrate so we wouldn't be interrupted, but I'd better see why Jeff is so anxious to talk to me. She pushed a button and placed the phone to her ear. Yes, Jeff, are the boys going crazy? Bella watched as Mickey's expression changed from pleasant to horrified. No, oh no, Jeff. Is he alive? Yes, yes. Okay. I'm with Bella. No, I'll leave right now. I'm on my way. She hung up and looked at Bella with tears streaming down her face. Joey Adams has been shot. Bella gasped. Her hand flew to cover her mouth. Oh, no. Her eyes welled with tears. When? Where? Is he alive? About a half hour ago, just outside the courthouse. They don't know if he's alive. He was with his brother. Mark? Is he? Mark's okay, except for the fact that he was standing next to Joey when some guy blew him away. Bella, I have to go. I'm coming too. But I don't care what Gordon thinks. I'm coming. I'll drive myself. I need to pick Logan up from school. Are you sure you want to do this? I have to be there for Mark and for their family. Mickey nodded and hugged her. I'll see you there. Bella ran upstairs and quickly dressed. Grabbing her keys and purse, she ran out the door and jumped in the car, calling Breeze as she backed down the driveway. But she didn't answer. New scene. Ava Banks, the paramedic who'd been so kind to Mark, came back to the curtained-off room where she'd left him, bearing the information he needed. He's alive. He's stable but critical. They took him straight into surgery. Apparently, your sister is a doctor on staff here and was making a big deal about being in on the consultation. Is she here? She just arrived. Mr. Adams? Mark looked up at a nurse who'd come to the door, the same one who'd been monitoring him for the past 30 minutes. We're going to go ahead and let you go. Some members of your family have arrived and are being taken to a private waiting room area. If you'll follow me, I'll show you the way. Mark hopped down off the table. Thank you. He stopped and turned to Ava. Thank you for everything. She shrugged. It's no thanks necessary. It's my job. She offered her hand. I know you guys are all strong in the faith. I'll keep you and your brother in my prayers, and I'll call my pastor and start a prayer chain. Thank you, Mark said softly and turned to follow the nurse. They walked briskly through the corridors, waited forever on an elevator, wound through another long corridor, were buzzed through a set of double doors, turned right, and opened a door on the left. The moment he stepped through, and everyone turned to see him, will remain forever etched in his memory. His mother's tear-streaked face, Eric with his arm around her, offering her what comfort he could. Ricky stood behind Bree, his hands on her shoulders, and Bree had her arms around Breeze, who had turned and was staring at him with horror on her face. Jeff was there, and Justin, and Lori. Young Eric and Taylor stared at him. Jojo ran forward and buried his face against his father's chest. Dad, is Uncle Joey okay? I don't know much yet. He's alive, and he's in surgery. Jeffy's here, and she's consulting. We know that part. She threw a fit to be able to be in on it, Jojo said. Mark's eyes met his mother's. Mom, he said, his voice breaking. I'm sorry. She came forward and wrapped her arms around her son. Oh, Mark, I'm so glad you're okay. Bree stepped forward and wrapped her arms around them both. The three of them cried together. They broke apart when the door opened and Jason and Angel came in, followed by Mickey. Each person hugged the other, but the group fell silent when Jason began to tell what he'd learned. The only information I have is Joey was struck twice with a 9mm Smith & Wesson. Twice, Shelley cried. Eric grabbed her and held her tight. Once in the chest, just to the left of his heart, and once in the abdomen, just to the left of his navel. He's in stable but critical condition. The guy who shot him was Dale Higgins. He's the guy Joey ran into Saturday, who'd beat his wife and tried to run her down. Joey intervened. It was just straight-up revenge. Mark looked down, thinking how much he liked to give in to revenge right now. Higgins is presently being held in the county jail. He glanced at Mark. On another subject, your father is on the way from San Francisco, and I sent a chopper to pick him up. He should be here in a few hours. Mark nodded. Thank you. Eric stepped up to Mark's side and leaned close. There's a bathroom through that door over there. I think it might be best if you go in and wash up. I'll give you my shirt. I have a t-shirt on underneath. Mark looked at him, confused at his words, and then he looked down. He was covered in blood. Joey's blood. He held his hands out. They, too, were covered in dried blood. He glanced around at the room at large and realized that's why everyone stared at him with such a look of horror on their faces. Nodding his head, he accepted Eric's shirt and headed for the bathroom. Breeze's mind felt numb. She found a chair in the corner and sat with her knees drawn up and her feet on the seat. Joey, her Joey, was somewhere in this hospital fighting for his life. Her cocky Joey, whom she'd never thought anything could happen to. He was invincible. This was all just a horrible mistake. The guy that shot him did it because Joey had stepped in to keep the man from hurting his wife. This was all because Joey wanted to be a force for good in this world. He said he was a warrior here to protect the innocent. She glanced around at all the tear-streaked faces. She thought of the Keno family like she thought of Joey, invincible. But they weren't. They were real people with real bodies that bled red just like everyone else. They were incredible, though, in that they didn't only talk the talk. They walked the walk every single day. Already in this very room, they'd held hands, prayed, and then made a pact to think nothing but positive thoughts. They loved and supported one another, and Joey was a part of this. He was an integral part. It was obvious he was loved a great deal by the people in this room, and that included her. Her eyes opened wide, her heart expanded. She loved him. She truly loved him, not because he was perfect, even though he was, but because his heart was strong and filled with love and compassion, and because he backed up what he said, because he was a man of honor. Joey would never change. He would never become the monster Breeze thought all men eventually become. She only had to glance around She only had to glance around her at the men in Joey's family to realize that this was a way of life for them, love and honor. She should have realized it. As strong as their chemistry was, he'd been in control. He'd proven he loved her by not taking her to bed, by showing her he was a man of honor. Oh, what she wouldn't give to feel his warm, healthy body against hers right this very minute. Oh, how she loved him. The tears welled up again and ran freely down her cheeks. It was Joey's mom, sitting down next to her, that had her looking up. Shelley put her arm around Breeze. He's going to be okay. I just know it. You do? I do. So don't worry. He's coming back to you. I love him, she whispered to Shelley. Shelley smiled. I know. And I'll tell you a little secret. I know he loves you too. Breeze looked up at the beautiful woman, realizing it was taking quite an effort for her to put on that brave smile. This must be torture for you too, Breeze said. It's hard, Shelley admitted. Maybe the hardest thing I've ever done. Bree was shot once, a long time ago, by a stray bullet, but they knew immediately that she was going to be okay. This feels much different from that. Someone actually tried to murder my son. I hate to think of my baby hurt and struggling to survive, but he will survive. If he's made it this far, he'll make it all the way. He's strong in both body and mind, and if anyone can make it through this, it's Joey. He has to live, Bree said softly. I have to tell him that I love him. Shelley nodded and gave Breeze a final hug. Me too. Eric kept careful watch over the people in the room, people he loved with every bit of his soul. At the moment, Mickey was busy comforting Bree. Angel was crossing the room to join Shelley and Breeze. Jeff and Ricky spoke quietly in a corner. Mark stood in the opposite corner, his arms folded across his chest, his head down. Lori had Taylor on her lap and was speaking softly to her. Young Eric and Jojo sat with their heads together, whispering. Justin and Jason stood like sentries beside him, doing what he was doing, watching the occupants of the room to see if anyone needed help in any way. However, all eyes turned when the door opened, and Mart looked up, his mouth dropped open. "Bella!" "Logan!" Eric and Jojo exclaimed, and Logan joined them immediately. Bella came forward and threw her arms around Mark. "Bella, what are you doing here?" "I had to come. Oh, Mark, I'm so sorry. I had to be here for you, for your family, for Joey." She pulled away put her hand against his cheek and looked into his eyes. And when she saw that they were filled with tears, she immediately followed suit. "Oh, Mark," she cried. They wrapped their arms around each other and stood together for a long time. New scene. They were right not to let her operate, Jeffy thought as she stood over her brother. They'd just wheeled him into recovery. She was trying to see him as a patient, but she couldn't. This was her brother. This was Joey. Yet this person looked nothing like Joey. This person looked frail. He had tubes coming out of his nose, IVs and monitors and catheters attached to various parts of his body. She wanted to see him with her own eyes before she went to report his condition to her family. She stroked his face, kissed his cheek, and took his hand. Closing her eyes, she tried to communicate with him through her mind. The moment she opened herself, she felt dizzy, but then she slowly became aware of him. She knew she was feeling what he was feeling, and he was floating. He was trying to wake up and was frustrated that he couldn't make his body move. He was aware that he'd been shot, and he was aware that he was still alive. "I'm here, Joey. Can you hear me? It's Jeffy. You're going to be okay. I can see the places you're hurt. I can see the damage. I'm commanding that you be healed in Jesus' mighty and powerful name." Wow. Did you feel that? I know you felt it because I'm feeling what you're feeling. That peaceful, warm light, it's beautiful. There's a part of God in every single one of us, Joey. It's like a light. Some people keep their light covered. Some people turn theirs off completely. But not you, Joey. Your light is bright. It's so bright, and I want you to use your light to receive Jesus' healing. Receive it. You can do that, Joey. I'll help you. Jeffy closed her eyes and prayed until the nurse had to interrupt to check him. Giving his hand one last squeeze, she left him to go find her family. When she opened the door to the waiting room, she felt such warmth and love. It was like sinking into a soothing hot bath. She smiled at everyone's hopeful expression. "He's going to be okay. His lung was damaged and repaired in 2 places where the bullet entered and exited, but it will heal. He lost a lot of blood, and the goal today was to repair damage and stabilize him. There was a second wound to the abdomen. It exited the body. It nicked the small intestine, which was repaired." "Is he awake?" Shelley asked. "Not yet. He just made it to recovery. He'll be there another hour or so, and then they'll move him to ICU. Once he's settled in there, they will let you see him, 2 at a time." Eric extended his hand, and Shelley took it and extended hers. Breeze and Bella watched as, without saying a word, the entire group clasped hands in a big circle. Mark extended his hand to Bella and Breeze and brought them in to participate. They all closed their eyes, and Eric began speaking in what Breeze thought sounded Hawaiian. When he finished, Shelley simply said, "Thank you, Jesus." Ricky spoke then in Chinese, as did young Eric. Jason and Justin spoke in Korean. Jeffy spoke in Latin, and everyone else spoke words of gratitude in English. Finally, only Bella and Breeze were left. Bella, like Shelley, uttered a simple thanks, and Breeze lifted her eyes heavenward and said in a firm voice, "I will be forever grateful for the second chance to love such a wonderful man." "Hear, hear," Ricky said. "Amen," some of the others murmured. Breeze looked at Bella. "Could there be a more loving, wonderful family than this?" she whispered. Bella smiled. "I know Mom and Dad are happy that we've been brought into this family circle." "Mark," Shelley said softly, "I need to know exactly what happened." They all took a seat and quieted to hear the story. There's not much to tell. It all happened so fast. We were walking down the courthouse steps and someone yelled something about a gun. Joey must have seen the guy because he pushed me away, and I fell a few steps, and I heard the gun fire twice. I looked back up at Joey, and he was lying on his back on the steps. I put pressure on the wound and talked to him, and he was conscious but sinking fast. I remember looking down and seeing the second wound and thinking we were going to lose him. He was having trouble breathing, and I kept telling him to fight for his life. He told me to take care of Breeze, and I told him to do it himself. And that's all I really remember. There was a paramedic there. She said I was in shock and shouldn't drive and gave me a lift to the hospital in exchange for me letting her monitor my vitals. We were at home, Shelley said, and Jeffy came running down the stairs screaming something about a gun and Joey. We called him immediately, but he didn't answer, and finally Eric called you. Did Joey pull his weapon? Jason asked. He never had a chance, Mark shook his head. He pushed me away. His first instinct was to protect me. You'd do the same for him, Eric said. They all turned when the door swung open and Robert Adams stepped into the room. How's Joey? Where's my son? I want to see him now. New scene. She'd been afraid to see him, afraid he would look different somehow, but he merely appeared to be sleeping. She crept closer and reached over the bed rail and touched his shoulder, marveling at the strength she felt beneath her fingers. His eyes opened, and she smiled at him. Hey, Joey. Hi, he said, his voice barely audible. Are you in any pain? A little. I hate this groggy feeling more than the pain. Well, try to relax. She stroked his cheek with her finger. He closed his eyes. She watched him breathe, feeling gratitude for each breath she saw him take. Joey, I want to tell you something, she said. He opened his eyes. What have you done now? She smiled at his attempt at humor. I want to tell you that I love you. He frowned. No, Breeze. No? No, you can't love me because I got shot. Her eyes flashed with anger. I don't love you because you got shot, you idiot. I realize I should have told you, that's all. And I can say I love you whenever I feel like it, and I just felt like it. He smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Breeze. I know you love me. I've known for a long time. You cocky moron, she hissed. Confidence. Just confidence, he murmured. She rolled her eyes. Whatever. She let down the bed rail and leaned down and kissed him. Get better fast, Joey, so I can show you just how much I love you. Now, that's incentive, he said, as he drifted off to sleep. New scene. I'm worried about you going back to that house, Mark said. I've already talked to him. I told him why I had Logan and where I was, because I didn't want him to think I'd kidnapped Logan and taken off. And what did he say? He said some very unkind things about Joey that don't bear repeating. Aw, Bella, what are we going to do, huh? He took her in his arms and kissed her soundly. I better let you go while I have the strength to do it. You and everyone else keep telling me that you're going to get me that order of custody. I believe you, Mark. I believe in you. Thank you, Bella. He kissed her again. Now go. He opened the car door for her, winked and smiled at Logan, waiting patiently on the passenger side. You take care of her. Logan grinned. I will. Mark watched them drive away and headed back into the hospital. He hurried through the main lobby where paparazzi and TV news reporters tried to get him to talk. Justin had already delivered a statement. They didn't need anything else. The family was making arrangements to stay with Joey in shifts. They were also insisting that Mark go home and spend the evening with his son. Mark's father, Robert, had also decided he would stay the night at Mark's house and had informed him that he was tired and ready to go. Mark wanted to see Joey one more time before he left and walked quietly up to the bed. Looking down at his sleeping brother, the movie of their lives played through his mind. Joey was the small one, the happy one, the cute one, Mark smiled, the one with the uncontrollable temper. He'd gotten into dozens of fights in school. Mark had had to talk him down several times. He remembered the time the rope bridge had broken out in the Georgia mountains when they'd gone hiking, and Joey had climbed right up that broken rope bridge like it was a ladder, and Mark had fallen and broken his arm. His mother, too, had fallen and almost lost her life. He shook his head to clear it of that image. And now he had another image that would stay with him, one of him leaning over his brother, asking him to fight for his life, blood seeping out from under his hands as he pressed on the wound. "You getting all sappy on me, bro?" Joey muttered. Mark blinked and smiled. "I just came to say good night." Joey gave a slight nod. "I know all." He stopped and gave a small grunt of pain. "I know all this was hard on you. Sorry about that." "Apology accepted. Never let it happen again." Mark held his hand out just above Joey's free hand. Joey swallowed hard, slowly lifted his hand and placed it in his brother's. Mark squeezed tightly. "You get some rest." Joey grimaced. "I will." Mark's brow furrowed. "Are you in pain?" "It appears so." "I'll tell the nurse on my way out," he said as he quickly turned and left. Outside the room, most everyone else had left the hospital. Jeff had surveillance duties. Mickey had to relieve Kimmy Lee, Jason's and Angel's daughter, who'd been kind enough to stay with the boys rather than come to the hospital herself. Ricky and his family, and Justin and Lori had left about the same time as Bella and Logan. Jason was speaking to Eric and Shelley before he took his leave. "And Agent Dunlop will be here within the next 30 minutes, and then I'll be heading out," Jason announced. "Do you actually think Joey is in danger?" Shelley asked. "Well, yes and no. Higgins acted alone. Still, I don't feel good leaving Joey vulnerable here. Not only is he a public figure, but there are enemies out there, people who Joey has helped put away, who know he's lying here in the hospital, unable to defend himself. I won't leave him alone." Eric nodded and shook his hand. "Thank you, Jason. Have I ever told you that I think you do a fine job?" Jason smiled, "Once or twice, but you don't have to thank me. I'll be sending the bill to you." "I'll take care of that with pleasure." He put his arm around Shelley. "Well, let me get Shelley home so she can be back here bright and early in the morning." Jason smiled at Shelley. "I have to say, I think it was very gracious of you to allow Breeze to take the first shift." Shelley shrugged. "I was young and in love once." Eric frowned. "And what are you now?" She smiled up at him and shrugged. I guess I'm still young and in love." "That's my girl." Eric and Shelley went in to say goodnight to Joey. The nurse had just renewed his pain medication, and so he was too groggy to talk. They kissed his forehead, hugged Breeze, and left. Jason and Angel stepped in 20 minutes later. Joey struggled to speak to Jason about his feelings about Judge Latham, but Jason told him to relax. He would be back tomorrow to speak with him. Jason also let Joey know he wasn't alone, that Agent Dunlop was on duty. Angel told him to hurry and get better because she needs her husband to take some time off, and Joey smiled. She kissed his cheek. "Well, I guess it's down to you and me," Bree said softly after everyone was gone. "Well, you and me and the agent outside the door." Joey nodded. "Glad you're here." Breeze realized he was struggling to speak because of the fresh dose of medication. She reached through the bed rail and took his hand. "It's okay, Joey. You don't have to talk. Just rest and get better." "You rest, too." She smiled. "I'll try." New scene. "So, you just had to go flying off to the hospital to see your lover boy." "I already told you, Gordon, it's not like that. And yes, I had to go to the hospital. Joey could have died. He's like family. I had to be there for Breeze, since he and Breeze are going to get married eventually." Gordon's eyes glittered with rage. "I will never be family with that punk." "I know that. I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about me, because like it or not, Breeze is my family." Gordon was quiet a moment. Bella braced for the strike, but it didn't come. "You're getting mighty uppity, you know that?" "Yesterday you said you liked the new brave me." "I did say that, didn't I?" He moved closer. "Well, let me just say this. Don't push it. There's only so much I'll take from you." His eyes ran over her face and down her body. He reached out to touch her cheek, smiling when she flinched slightly. "Your face already looks a lot better. The swelling is almost completely gone. You're almost pretty again." She pulled away. "Don't get any ideas." She tried to walk away, but he grabbed her arm and jerked her against him. I don't like you taking my son out of school. Oh, please, Gordon, Bella said sarcastically. What do you think I'm going to do? Take off with him and hide out somewhere for the rest of our lives? I wouldn't do that. You must know me well enough to know I wouldn't do that. He nodded. I know you don't have the guts to do something as bold as that. Just be careful, Bella. There's only so much I can take before you push me over the edge. She jerked her arm away. Don't threaten me. We have an arrangement. I live here with you only so I can be with my son, and you keep your hands off me. And what do I get out of this arrangement? Don't play dumb with me, Gordon. You think I don't know what you got? You got off the hook. You got your felony charges dropped so that you can keep your career. His eyes opened wide. Well, I guess you're not as dumb as I thought. She headed up the steps. Not nearly. New scene. He left the house extra early, before even Logan was awake. He smiled. He had a pleasant errand to run, and then he'd have breakfast with Catherine, along with some hot early morning fun before he went into the office. Ah, yes, life was good. Thanks to some whacked-out guy bent on revenge, Joey Adams was lying in a hospital bed with holes in his chest. Gordon had been elated when he'd heard the news. He'd promised that he would pay him back one day for what he'd done, for breaking into his house and interfering between him and Bella, for manhandling him and cuffing him like some common criminal. Now was his chance. He whistled a lively tune as he parked his car in the near empty hospital lot and walked across the parking lot at a brisk pace. He used his credentials as an attorney to get the information as to what room Joey Adams was in. He had flashes of what he would do once he got to the room. So many things. Adams would show fear because he'd know Gordon was there for the revenge he'd promised. Joey being in ICU would mean he would only be alone for short periods of time, but a few minutes is all Gordon needed. He turned the corner and saw the room at the end of the corridor. A man sat in a chair outside the room, and as Gordon approached, the man stood and blocked his way. I'm sorry, sir, but you can't go in there. I'm here to see Joey Adams. I'm his attorney. Sorry, sir, but I don't know you, and I can't allow you in. Did you hear what I said? Yes, sir, you said you were Joey's attorney, which is a falsehood, so I have to think that your reason for being here is not to Joey's benefit. I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You can't keep me from going in there, Gordon said indignantly. The man gave a slight smile. I'm fairly certain that I can. You can't touch me. I'll take you to court. You try to get past me, and I'll do more than touch you, sir. Are you threatening me? Absolutely. Gordon stood glaring at the man, looking him up and down. This guy was another Ameritech agent, that much was obvious. They were all so cocky. Gordon knew he wasn't going to get past him. His good mood deteriorated. He would have to wait for another time. He stepped back. Fine, I'll wait, but feel free to tell him that I came by to see him. Oh, I'll be sure to do that. New scene. How's he doing? Shelley whispered. Bree smiled sleepily. He's doing great. No problems. No complications. Jeffy came in about 4 times during the night to check on him, and the doctor who did the surgery came and left about 30 minutes ago. He said he's doing so well they could probably move him to a regular room by this evening. If not, then definitely by the morning. Oh, thank goodness. Hi, Mom, Joey said. Shelley smiled down at him. Hey, baby boy. How do you feel? I'm okay. Sleepy. Shelley leaned over and brushed his hair off his forehead. Well, then sleep, sweetheart. You need rest in order to heal. Joey smiled. How many times had he heard those words? Jason and Eric are outside, and they want to come in and talk to you for a few minutes, and then you'll be stuck with me today. Good. Breeze needs to go home and eat and sleep. Yes, she does, Shelley agreed. The doors opened, and Jason, Eric, Agent Dunlop, and another Ameritech agent entered the room. Quick group conference before they throw us out, Jason said. Morning, Agent Adams. How are you feeling today? Joey smiled at Jason's formality. I'm fine, sir. I'm ready for duty. Good. Your assignment is to heal quickly. Already on it, sir, Joey said. Agent Dunlop will be leaving, and Agent Bradfield will be your buddy today. Joey smiled and lifted his hand slightly. What's up, Dan? Agent Bradfield smiled at Joey. Not much, Joe. What's up with you? Oh, and one more thing, Dunlop suddenly said. Some guy showed up at 6:30 this morning wanting to get in to see Joey. Did you get a name? Jason asked. No, I don't think he wanted to give me a name. He said he was Joey's attorney, which anyone at Ameritech would know isn't true. What did he look like? Well-dressed, expensive suit, slim build, light blonde hair and blue eyes. Oh, Lord, that's Gordon, Bree said. Jason nodded. Sounds like him. Why would he try to see Joey? Because he wants me dead, Joey forced out. Does he now? Eric asked. His last words to me were, "You're a dead man, Adams." He promised to get me for breaking into his house and rescuing Bella. It took Joey every bit of energy he had to speak such a long sentence, and he closed his eyes in exhaustion. What are you saying? Shelley demanded. What do you think he had planned? She asked Eric. Joey opened his eyes and gave a faint laugh. Who knows? Maybe he was going to put a pillow over my face. He came here to hurt you? Shelley cried loudly. Now, Mom, calm down, Joey said weakly. I was just kidding. That's not a bit funny. Well, he didn't get in, Eric reminded her. Only because Jason had the forethought to place a guard. She let go of a string of curses. How dare he think he can come here and hurt my son? Eric's lips twitched at his wife's use of bad language. It meant she was truly upset, and he didn't dare remark on it. He probably just wanted to gloat, Joey offered weakly. He will not get away with this. I'm going to see him. I'm going over there right now. She turned to Eric. I'm going to need for you to make that happen. I'm going to have a word with that man. Now, Shelley, Eric started. Don't you now, Shelley, me. I rode with you today, so you're going to take me over there. No. Eric, I'm not kidding. I need you to make this possible. I'm going to see him. No. No way, sweetheart. Sorry. Jason, will you take me over there? You're not going over to Gordon's office. Let us take care of it. I promise we will. I'm Joey's mother, and I'm going to take care of it. You don't think I could kick his butt? Well, I'm pretty sure you can, Jason admitted, but you could get hurt doing it, and I can't allow that. We will have a word with Gordon. I'm not afraid of that horrible man. He came to this hospital with who knows what in mind to do to my baby. He is not going to get away with it. Shelley, calm down, Eric said. Please. You're getting Joey upset. Joey quickly tried to hide his smile so that he could appear upset. Breeze reached over and squeezed Shelley's arm. Shelley glanced at her, saw the intent look in her eyes, and immediately understood. Eric, please, take me to see Gordon Landau, she begged. No, Shelley, you need to let this go. Please, hon, let this go. Shelley looked down, defeat in her eyes. Fine. She looked back up at Jason. But promise me you'll have a word with that man. I promise, Jason said firmly. There's too many people in here, the nurse said as she came through the door. Oh, sorry, Shelley said. We were just changing shifts. She motioned to Eric and Jason. I know you guys had some business to discuss with Joey. Breeze and I will walk down to the cafe. Agent Dunlop told Joey to get well and left quickly. Agent Bradfield set up shop outside the room, and Shelley and Breeze headed toward the elevator. So, you're going to take me to Gordon's office? Shelley asked. Breeze smiled. Good, you got my message. Shelley smiled. Great minds think alike. I have a feeling you and I are going to be great friends. Breeze laughed. I hope so. When do you want to go? Shelley thought. Probably wouldn't be wise to try to go right now. Besides, I need to stay with Joey. Bree is coming up this afternoon about 2. Will Gordon still be at his office at that time? I think so. It's worth a try. I'll pick you up in front of the hospital shortly after 2. I'll be there. Back in ICU, Joey did his best to fill Jason in on the suspicions he had about Judge Latham. He was finding it difficult to concentrate, but finally got out what he wanted to say. Jason immediately called Jeff, relayed the information to him, and had him run with it. They were just getting ready to leave when Jeffy stopped in. Hi, Daddy, she said cheerfully. Hey, Uncle Jason. She kissed them both on the cheek. Isn't it time for you to get home and get some sleep? Eric asked. Yes, I'm on my way, but I wanted to check in on Joey before I left. She went to his bed, took his vitals, did a quick exam, took his hand, and looked into his eyes for several seconds before she spoke. Hi, Joey. Hey, sis, he said softly. She touched his face and frowned. You're tired. You're not getting enough rest. That's all I'm getting. And you're not supposed to be using your superpowers on me. You know how it drains you. Someone tried to end my brother's life, and I'll do whatever I feel necessary to help him heal. Now, you don't realize it, but just talking is taking all your energy. Tell me the truth. Do you feel tired? Exhausted. I feel like I could sleep for days. Well, then that's exactly what you need to do. Let me just warn you, if you get overly tired, your body immediately begins to break down. Next thing you know, you've developed an infection. Then they won't move you out of ICU, and even though they expect your hospital stay to be no more than 10 days, it could end up a lot longer. Is that what you want? Geez, Jeffy, of course not. Then get some rest. She looked up at Jason and Eric. And the two of you know better than to get him all tired out. Where's Mom? She went to the cafe with Breeze. Fine. I'll stay with him until she gets back. You two go do whatever it is you macho men do all day. Jason and Eric headed obediently toward the door. She sure is getting to be a pushy little thing, Jason said. Eric smiled, only when she's in her doctor mode. Bye, Daddy. Bye, Uncle Jason, she offered sweetly. Bye, Jeffy. See you later, Joey. New scene. Shelley spent the day holding Joey's hand, telling him funny stories from his childhood, telling him how much she loved him, and simply watching him sleep. Every time she looked at his handsome face, his dimples, her heart overflowed with love. For a long time, he'd been her baby. She'd had her tubes tied after his birth, and she had that special bond with him because she knew he would be her last. Then the miracle of Jeffy came about, but Joey had never lost that baby of the family status in her mind. Now she'd almost lost him, but she knew better than to dwell on that. She gave thanks that he was alive and getting better every minute. Still, it was hard to keep her mind from the fact that someone had actually tried to kill him. Why? Because he never backed down from doing the right thing. Because he's such a warrior. All of them were. Her entire family, each in their own way. And because Joey had defended a helpless woman, he came within an inch of dying. Oh, and then there was Gordon Landau. Shelley tried not to hate the man, though she seemed to be losing that battle. She had no idea what he'd intended when he came to Joey's room earlier this morning, but she would find out very soon. Just as she had thought, Bree quietly opened the door and slipped in. Just as she had that thought, Bree quietly opened the door and slipped in. How's he doing? He's sleeping comfortably. They were going to move him out of ICU this evening sometime, but now they say it will probably be tomorrow morning. Why? Has there been a setback? They said they're being overly cautious, but he's not as alert as they'd like him to be. Bree frowned. That sounds bad. That's what I said, but they assured me there was nothing to worry about. Still, I'll feel better when Jeffy comes in tonight and has a look at him. Bree nodded. Me too. Oh, and by the way, a few of the nurses were exclaiming over the fact that you were going to be here, and I told them you would have no problem giving them an autograph and taking a picture with them. Bree nodded. Sure, whatever it takes to make sure Joey's well taken care of. Shelley smiled. I also told them that Ricky would probably be joining you later. Ah, so now we get to the heart of things, Bree joked. He's bringing the kids up after dinner, so yes, he'll be here. Good. Then I'll leave it up to you to take care of business. Well, I have to be going. I have a few errands to run. Shelley stood and leaned over the bed. Bye, sweetie. I'm leaving, but Bree is here. Joey opened his eyes. Bye, Mom. Love you. Love you too, baby. Bree moved forward and took Shelley's place. Hey, Squirt. Joey smiled at his older sister before his eyes fluttered back closed. Shelley grabbed her purse and hurried out of the room. Breeze drove up to the curb the moment Shelley stepped out of the hospital front doors, and she got in quickly. Breeze smiled at her. Shelley smiled back. She had a few choice words for Gordon Landau. I was thinking, Bree said as she drove, getting past two receptionists and an executive secretary to get into Gordon's office might be a bit difficult. Shelley frowned. But we might be able to get him to come out to us in the parking deck, Breeze continued. Really? How? Well, all I have to do is tell him I have a message for him from Joey and to meet me in the parking lot in 15 minutes. What makes you think he'll come? Oh, I know Gordon. It's a challenge, and he won't be able to resist. Shelley nodded. Okay, then. Make the call. Breeze dialed Gordon's cell. She didn't have to try to convince him to meet her. He told her he'd be on the top deck of the parking garage in 20 minutes. Breeze hung up with a smile. That was almost too easy. Shelley frowned. Those words meant more to her than what Breeze knew. What's the matter? Breeze asked. It's the words you just spoke. Too easy. It's a long story. We've got 20 minutes to kill, Breeze said. Okay, well, a long time ago, one of Eric's old enemies attacked me. You're kidding. Unfortunately, no. He attacked me and beat me up pretty bad. He left a message for Eric written on my stomach in black marker, and it said, too easy. Oh, that's horrible. I'm over it, but when you said the words, it brought it back so fast. Weird how that happens sometimes. Breeze frowned. So you say he beat you up pretty bad, then I guess you can really identify with what Bella has been through. Shelley nodded. In more ways than one. That same guy got to me so many times, it's a miracle I'm alive. She fingered the scars on the soft underside of her arm. Excuse me. I guess that explains why Eric is so protective of you now. Shelley nodded. I guess. Though sometimes he goes overboard, like today. He knows I can take care of myself. I even asked him to go with me. I see no reason why he couldn't have accommodated me. She looked around as Breeze pulled into a parking deck. We're here? We are. So do you know exactly what you're going to do? I'm going to ask him what he thought he was doing coming to see Joey in the hospital. And you think he's going to give you the truth? No, of course not. Still, I'm going to let him know he won't get away with doing anything to my Joey. I just wanted to show him that neither Joey nor any one of his family members are intimidated by him. And what's more, that he really shouldn't dare to mess with us if he wants to live another day. Breeze giggled. Geez, you sound so fierce and tough when you talk like that. Shelley smiled. Oh, I am when I want to be. And today, I want to be. They drove up to the top deck, which had only a few open parking spaces. Breeze pulled into one, and both women got out of the car and leaned against the back bumper, their eyes on the elevator from which Gordon should emerge. It didn't take long. Shelley's body stilled in readiness for battle as the man walked off the elevator, straightening his cuffs and smoothing his hair. Breeze stepped out from the car so he would be sure to see her. He never slowed, but came straight to them. Gordon glanced at his watch. His eyes moved over Shelley, dismissing her, and then to Breeze. Say what you have to say. I have things I need to do. Breeze gestured toward Shelley. Actually, she's the one that has something to say to you. He turned impatiently. And you are? My name is Shelley Keno. I'm Joey Adams' mother. Humor flickered in his eyes. Joey sent his mommy to give me a message. How very telling. Shelley hadn't stopped to think about how it would seem to have one's mother confront an enemy. Still, it wasn't as if Joey needed to prove himself to this man any more than he already had. She drew a deep breath. Well, let me begin by telling you, Mr. Landau, that you don't impress me or intimidate me in any way, so you can stop with the silly little barbs that you think are stabbing me in the heart. He started to speak, but she held her hand up to stop him, and Breeze looked on in admiration. I want you to tell me why you came to the hospital this morning and tried to get in to see my son. What makes you think I came to the hospital? You have your facts mixed up. She rolled her eyes. You must be more of an idiot than I thought. Listen, the agent we had on duty told us about your attempt, and we ran the hospital security camera back. You were easily identified. Breeze smiled, realizing this woman was much tougher than she appeared and much smarter than she'd given her credit for. His jaw clamped as he realized he'd acted rashly, not taking into consideration that the hospital had security cameras. His need for vengeance made him blind. He guessed it was a good thing he hadn't been able to get into the room. He'd intended to hurt the man. Hurt him bad. What? No smart comeback this time? I didn't think so. Now I want to know what you intended. Gordon smiled snidely. Okay, so I was there. So what? I guess you'll never know what I intended, will you? She smiled back. I already do. You intended to harm him. You intended to make him suffer because he was the one who stepped in when big, bad you were beating up your tiny little wife. You're such a coward. Do you know that? Only cowards beat up on women. Do you realize what kind of mentality that is? It's like kicking a little dog or slapping a baby. Does it make you feel big and strong to know that you can beat up your wife? Maybe you do it because you know you could never go up against a man and win. You know why? Because you're a coward, a sniveling little coward. Oh, I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking how good it would feel to plow your fist into my face. And you know what? I wish with all my being that you would try, because then I could justify kicking your ass. And I can, easily. He moved closer to her, and she stood up straight and lifted her face proudly, waited for him to speak, but it seemed he couldn't put two words together. You're pathetic, she said, noticing the word had a distinct effect on him. Useless and pathetic, she added for good measure. You just remember this. You mess with my family, anyone in my family, and it will be the last thing you do. He finally found his voice. You think you can come here and talk to me this way? You think you can come here and threaten me? She smiled. I just did, didn't I? What are you going to do, huh? Like I said, you don't intimidate me in any way. She turned away. Come on, Breeze. I just realized he's so pathetic he's not worth any more time. He moved forward. You just wait a minute. Now I have something I want to say. He reached out and grabbed her arm. The voice seemed to come from nowhere. Let go of her. Gordon's head snapped around, looking for the source of the voice. Shelley and Breeze did the same thing. Let go or die, Eric said softly as he stepped out from between two cars parked only a few spaces away. Gordon opened his hand so fast he practically shoved Shelley away. Shelley, get in the car, Eric ordered, pointing at his black Escalade. But Eric didn't intimidate Shelley any more than Gordon did. I told you I could handle this myself. I didn't need your help, she ground out, her hands on her hips. And I asked you not to do this. We'll talk later. Fine, we'll talk later, but you just keep in mind that you just really pissed me off, and that's not a good thing. Eric glanced over at Jason, who stood across the drive. The man was grinning, and Eric rolled his eyes at him and then turned back to Shelley. Fine, you're mad. Me too. He then turned to Breeze. And you, young lady, will have Joey to deal with, so good luck with that. Breeze frowned. Eric looked back at Gordon. Just so you know, I believe Shelley's take on what you had planned this morning is right on, as was the threat she made. Let me give you a word of advice, counselor. You don't want to take us on. You will lose. You harm a member of my family, and every single one of us will do what we have to do. Always, without a doubt, and without thought to the consequences. He motioned to Breeze. Get in your car and go now. She did what he said without hesitation. Eric took Shelley by the arm and guided her to the passenger side, opened her door, and helped her in. He nodded at Jason, who was getting into his car. They all backed out and drove away, leaving Gordon standing there, speechless. Shelley folded her arms across her chest and stared straight ahead. Eric glanced over at her. He was truly angry. It reminded him of the first time he'd been truly angry at her, which is when she'd tried to intervene with some drugged-out kids on the beach. He'd yelled at her, and she'd yelled back at him, and a short time later he'd been kissing her. He fought the smile the memory brought to his lips. She'd put herself in danger then, and she did it again today, and like back then, she was looking adorable as she sat nursing her temper. His Shelley was an extraordinary martial artist. She was a marked champion, and she'd never stopped training. She could hold her own. However, she was a female, and like it or not, physiologically speaking, females were weaker than males. Strong, young, athletic females were weaker than males. And Shelley is strong and athletic, but she is also about to turn 56. Landau could have hurt you, Shelley. She didn't answer. I know you would have gotten in some good licks and maybe taken him down, but not before he had a chance to hurt you. She turned her head and glared at him. I had it under control. I didn't need your help. He put his hand on you. So, it's a first step. I understand that. Well, I don't care how mad you are, Shelley. I'm not going to let anything happen to you, period. It's my responsibility to protect you. It most certainly is not. Look, I'm not trying to pull any macho power play on you, Shelley. I swear I'm not. There have been times when I was unable to protect you. Then there are times like this when I am able to be there. It is my duty to do all I can to protect those I love. That includes the guys as much as the girls. Shelley, you have to understand that a man could hurt you, or Bree, or Jeffy, when he may not be able to hurt me, or Ricky, or Mark, or Joey. Well, of course I understand that. Okay, then. All I'm asking is that you not put yourself in danger. You want to go confront the woman who stole your parking place? By all means, confront her. But not a man, and especially not a man with the history Gordon Landau has. Shelley sighed. She knew he wasn't being unreasonable. Still, she hated to lose the argument, even though it appeared that's how it would be this time. She looked over at him. How did you know? He smiled. You would never give in that easy. Both Jason and I knew you had something up your sleeve. It was pretty easy to figure out. How did you know we'd be up on the top level? Well, it was the only level with any parking spaces, so we figured you'd be coming up there. We actually thought we'd have to follow you into the building, but it turned out even better than we thought. She frowned. He smiled and placed his open hand on the console, palm up. I'm sorry, too. I guess I should have conceded. I should have taken you to see him and stood there while you had your way. Your request wasn't unreasonable. I think I would have realized that and given in and called you and told you I'd take you myself. But when we realized you and Breeze had a plan, we were curious enough to see how you handled things. And? He nodded. And I'm proud of you, as always. My sweet Shelley is one tough lady. She slipped her hand into his open one. Then you're not really mad? Oh, yes, I am. You put yourself in danger. When we get home, I'm going to take you up to the bedroom and punish you, he said seriously. Smiling, she brought his hand to her lips and kissed it. Well, I think I'm looking forward to that. New scene. And then I hit the guy in the fade to win the game. Jojo said. He reached down and touched his uncle's hand. And so, even though I didn't want to play with you being shot and everything, I'm glad Dad talked me into it. He said you wouldn't want me to miss my game and that playing was the best thing I could do for you. He was right, Joey said weakly. He smiled at the three people who stood by his bed, his brother, his nephew Jojo, and his father Robert. And I'm sure your grandfather was glad he got to see you play. Robert Adams clapped a hand on Jojo's shoulder. I wish you'd been there to see it, Joe. Your nephew here is a real chip off the old block. I promised to make next week's game, Joey said. We'll see about that, Mark said quickly. So are they going to move you to a regular room? Not until tomorrow. No complications, just being cautious, Joey added quickly. I can't believe how much better you look now than last night, Robert said. You were a pitiful sight. Joey's eyes met Mark's. He knew it would be a long time before Mark would be able to forget seeing his brother gunned down. He knew how he would feel had the reverse happened. He looked back at his father. I'm getting better by the minute. That's good. I'll probably stick around a few more days and then I've got to get back to San Francisco, Robert said. I understand, Joey said. I'll keep you posted on my progress. Mark watched as Joey's eyes fluttered closed and he leaned close. Hey, bro, I'm going to run them home and I'll be back to stay with you for a while. Joey opened his eyes. Sorry I keep drifting off. It's all the good drugs. Just rest. Joey nodded and slept. And that is the end of chapter 13.